What if I told you that in a continent with some of the biggest economies in the world, China, Japan, South Korea, there's one small country that beats almost all of them at something critical to global success: English. And not just in textbooks or exams, but in real-life conversations, business deals, global careers, and even pop culture. That country is the Philippines. And the story of how Filipinos became some of the best English speakers in Asia is not just about language. It's about history, survival, culture, and opportunity. By the end of this documentary, you'll understand why the Philippines has turned English into a secret weapon that sets it apart from most of Asia. To understand why Filipinos speak such good English, we need to rewind to history. For more than 300 years, the Philippines was a colony of Spain. During that time, religion and culture shaped much of society. But when Spain lost control and the Americans took over in 1898, everything changed. Unlike the Spanish, the Americans focused on governance, and most importantly, education. They introduced an American-style public school system and sent hundreds of teachers across the Pacific. These teachers, called the Thomasites, didn't just teach math or science. They taught in English. For the first time, Filipino children were learning their entire curriculum in a foreign tongue. Now here's the catch. This wasn't just an experiment. It was a national project. Schools, government offices, courts, newspapers, all started to adopt English as a working language. For most Asian countries at the time, English was still a foreign subject, something to be memorized in textbooks. In the Philippines, it became part of daily life. And because education spreads from one generation to the next, the habit of using English was passed down like an heirloom. That's why today, over a century later, English feels natural to most Filipinos. But history is just the beginning. Let's look at education today. The Philippines has two official languages, Filipino and English. From kindergarten onward, students are exposed to both. Think about this. A child in the Philippines might solve math problems in English, write an essay in English, then go home and watch cartoons in English. Even science, computer studies, and sometimes history are taught in English. This daily repetition makes the language second nature. By the time a student finishes high school, they've used English in almost every subject for more than a decade. That's why many Filipinos don't just know English, they live in it. Compare this with other parts of Asia. In Japan or China, for example, students often spend years memorizing vocabulary and grammar, but very little time practicing actual conversation. So when they graduate, they might be able to pass a written test, but struggle to hold a natural conversation. In the Philippines, the system forces students to actually think, speak, and argue in English. It's not just a subject, it's the medium of learning. That's a huge difference. But here's another twist that makes the Philippines unique: media and entertainment. Turn on the TV, go to the cinema, or listen to the radio in Manila, Cebu, or Davao, and you'll find English everywhere. Hollywood movies? Shown in English with subtitles, not dubbed. American pop songs? Played in their original form. Local media even mixes English and Filipino all the time. This constant exposure makes Filipinos comfortable with real-world English, the slang, the humor, the accents. A teenager in Manila might pick up phrases from Marvel movies, while a call center agent in Cebu masters an American accent by watching late-night talk shows. This cultural immersion doesn't happen in most of Asia, where foreign content is usually dubbed into the local language. And then there's something even more fascinating: Taglish. This is the everyday blend of Tagalog and English. Imagine someone saying, "I'll meet you later, essay, bahay." That's half English, half Filipino, and totally normal. Far from being a problem, Taglish actually makes Filipinos more flexible. It removes the fear of making mistakes. In many Asian countries, people hesitate to speak English because they're worried about grammar. In the Philippines, people just use whatever mix of English and Filipino works, and it flows naturally. That fearless, practical attitude is why so many Filipinos are confident English speakers. But let's not forget economics. The Philippines has built an entire industry around its English advantage. The outsourcing sector, often called BPO or business process outsourcing. call centers, IT services, customer support. Companies from the United States, Europe, and beyond rely on Filipino workers to handle their clients because of their excellent English skills. Today, the BPO industry employs over 1 million Filipinos and generates billions for the economy. In fact, the Philippines has sometimes been called the call center capital of the world. This industry not only provides jobs, but also pushes young people to polish their English even further, knowing it's their ticket to a better career. So when you put history, education, media, culture, and economics together, the result is a nation where English is not foreign. It's familiar. Filipinos switch between languages effortlessly, a skill that makes them stand out in Asia. But the story doesn't end there. Because English isn't just a tool for jobs or school. For millions of Filipinos, it's a passport to the world. Every year, millions of overseas Filipino workers travel abroad, to the United States, Canada, the Middle East, Hong Kong, Europe. Many of them work in healthcare, hospitality, or education, industries where communication is key. Their ability to speak fluent English gives them an edge over workers from other countries. That's why Filipino nurses are so respected in the US and the UK, or why Filipino teachers are recruited in places as far away as the Middle East and Africa. English opens doors, and Filipinos walk through them with confidence. And here's what surprises many visitors. Tourists often expect to hear broken English when they land in Manila or Cebu. Instead, they find taxi drivers cracking jokes in English, kids singing English songs, and locals who can carry conversations as smoothly as someone from Los Angeles or London. This shocks many first-time visitors and makes the Philippines stand out even more. So the big question remains, why does the Philippines speak better English than most of Asia? The answer is simple. Because for the Philippines, English is not just an academic subject. It's history, it's culture, it's opportunity, it's part of their national identity. But there's more to this story. We'll dive deeper into how this English advantage shapes Filipino society today, how it affects politics, how it sometimes creates challenges, and why it positions the Philippines for a powerful role in the future of Asia. Now that we've seen how history, education, and culture shape the Philippines into a nation of English speakers, let's look at what this means today. Because the English advantage isn't just about passing exams or landing call center jobs. It's about identity, politics, opportunity, and even challenges that come with being so globally connected. One of the most striking things about the Philippines is how English has become the language of power. Government hearings, Supreme Court rulings, even presidential speeches are often delivered in English. Laws are written in English, contracts are signed in English, and much of the country's bureaucracy functions in English. This makes the Philippines stand out in Asia. In countries like Japan or Thailand, government work is almost always conducted in the native language. But in the Philippines, English is woven into the very structure of governance. It gives Filipinos an edge when dealing with international partners, investors, and diplomats because they can negotiate and collaborate without a translator. But there's a flip side. Because English is so dominant in official settings, sometimes it creates a divide between urban Filipinos who use English daily and rural communities where Filipino or regional languages dominate. In cities like Manila or Cebu, young professionals switch from English to Taglish without a second thought. In rural provinces, English may feel more formal or distant. This gap sometimes fuels debates about national identity. Is the Philippines losing part of itself by leaning so heavily on English? Or is it actually creating a hybrid identity that blends local roots with global reach? The answer is probably both. English has helped the Philippines integrate into the global economy, but it also raises questions about inequality. Families who can afford better schools often give their children a stronger command of English, which leads to better jobs. Meanwhile, poorer families sometimes struggle to keep up. In this way, English is both a ladder to success and a mirror reflecting the country's social divides. Yet despite these challenges, one thing remains clear. English has positioned the Philippines as one of Asia's most connected nations. Think about the overseas workforce. There are over 10 million overseas Filipino workers spread across the globe. Their ability to communicate in English allows them to adapt faster in foreign countries. It's why Filipino nurses dominate in U.S. hospitals, why cruise ships hire Filipino staff in huge numbers, and why Filipino teachers can be found in schools across Asia and the Middle East. Every paycheck they send back home fuels the Philippine economy. In fact, remittances from overseas workers make up nearly 10% of the country's GDP. And behind that flow of money is a skill, English, that connects Filipinos to the rest of the world. But it doesn't stop at labor. English fluency is also powering the Philippines' creative and digital industries. From YouTubers and TikTok influencers who can reach global audiences, to Filipino authors publishing internationally, to software engineers working for Silicon Valley companies remotely, the ability to communicate in English allows Filipinos to participate in the global conversation. While other Asian countries are still trying to break the language barrier, Filipinos are already there, contributing, competing, and thriving. And then there's the cultural side. If you spend time in the Philippines, you'll notice something unusual. A conversation in English doesn't feel forced. It feels natural. Friends mix it with Filipino. Teachers joke with students in English. Even street vendors sometimes switch to English when talking to tourists. This comfort level is rare in Asia, where speaking English often feels like stepping outside the cultural norm. In the Philippines, it's part of the norm itself. This ease has deep consequences. It gives Filipinos confidence when engaging with foreigners, and confidence is everything. When a Japanese businessman hesitates to pitch in English, a Filipino counterpart might step in smoothly, winning trust. When a Chinese student struggles to converse abroad, a Filipino student may blend right in. In a world where communication is power, that confidence becomes an invisible advantage. Of course, no story is complete without its challenges. Some experts argue that while English has given the Philippines global access, it has also overshadowed the development of Filipino and other local languages. Others worry about the so-called brain drain, highly skilled Filipinos leaving to work abroad, their English skills making them desirable in foreign markets, but leaving gaps at home. Still, these are challenges that reflect success rather than failure. After all, the reason brain drain happens is because Filipino talent is in such high demand worldwide. Now, let's talk about education reform. The Philippine government knows that English is a key asset, but it also knows that education needs to balance global skills with local identity. That's why recent policies emphasize bilingual learning, Filipino and English side by side. The goal is to preserve national culture while still giving students a competitive edge. It's a delicate balance, but one that shows the Philippines understands the importance of both roots and wings. And if you think this story is only about language, think again. English in the Philippines is tied to its vision of the future. The country is betting on industries that thrive on communication, outsourcing, digital content, tourism, healthcare. It wants to be seen as a hub not just of labor, but of ideas, culture, and innovation. English is the bridge that makes that ambition possible. Consider this. In surveys, global companies consistently rank the Philippines as one of the top destinations for outsourcing. Why? Not just because labor is affordable, but because communication is seamless. Filipino agents can talk to American customers about sports, pop culture, or business without missing a beat. They understand nuance, tone, and humor. That cultural intelligence, layered on top of language fluency, is priceless. It's something that's very hard to replicate in other parts of Asia. So, why does the Philippines speak better English than most of Asia? Because it had the perfect storm of history, education, culture, and opportunity. Because it didn't just teach English in classrooms, it lived it, adapted it, and made it part of everyday life. Because Filipinos were never afraid to make the language their own, mixing it, reshaping it, and using it to open doors to the world. And here's the final thought. Language is more than words. It's power. It's access. It's connection. In a world where communication defines opportunity, the Philippines has turned English into one of its most powerful assets. And while other nations are still struggling to catch up, the Philippines is already ahead, speaking not just with fluency, but with confidence, creativity, and heart. That's why, when people ask why Filipinos speak better English than most of Asia, the answer is simple. Because for the Philippines, English is not just a second language. It's a way of life,